Those who know do not speak. Those who speak do not know.
This is a Japanese proverb that demonstrates the importance silence plays in Japanese culture. It is also used as a form of nonverbal communication, much like gestures and facial expressions. Because the Japanese value the ability to understand meaning without having to say anything, the Japanese culture is a high-context society. This also causes them to communicate in a way that promotes harmony within the group and avoids conflict, making the Japanese culture a collective one. Silence in Japan can be used as a face-saving strategy that might indicate embarrassment due to loss of face. For example, say an American was talking to a Japanese person in English and the American asked a question. English not being their native language, the Japanese doesn't understand and remains silent, not wanting to give the wrong answer. If this situation occurred between two Japanese people, the person asking the question would understand the silence to mean the addressee was confused and might try rephrasing the question. However, an American might assume the Japanese doesn't know the answer, or is perhaps too shy to respond. This situation also demonstrates how Japan is a high-context society, meaning the language relies more heavily on nonverbal communication, including factors such as setting, time, place, and common knowledge to imply messages rather than say them outright. The listener has a greater responsibility in figuring out the speaker's intentions in Japan than in America. In an address to a group of business executives, Yoshida Susumu stated that,
in contrast to Westerners who depend on words, the Japanese can communicate through simple indications or hints. Words are merely an indication leading to the meaning, and the meaning itself is often buried between the lines without being expressed in a way that would be immediately understood by Westerners. In Japanese-style communication, what is uttered can be fully understood only by those who have had similar experiences.
This major difference in communication styles can make it difficult for the Japanese to communicate with Westerners. The Japanese person might assume an American has had a similar experience and relies on that seemingly common knowledge to communicate their point. If the American hasn't had that experience, they might not understand what the Japanese person is trying to say. It is important for Americans to remember to rely on context to convey meaning, rather than the quantity of words. This will prevent the American from seeming over-talkative. Silence can also be seen as a function of collectivism. To avoid causing conflict and promote unity within the community, the Japanese try to avoid saying the wrong thing. Sometimes the best way to do this is to say nothing at all. Pre-modern Japanese farmers demonstrated an early example of collectivism. They were reliant on other villagers due to the necessity of group cooperation in early Japanese village life. As a result, group exclusion became a powerful sanction throughout rural society. However, things were quite the opposite for America. Individualism was perhaps among the initial values to emerge in America and is still prevalent today. For example, employees will change jobs in order to advance their careers in the United States because their first consideration is always the individual. Conversely, in Japan, individuals have traditionally been expected to retain affiliation with the same company throughout their working career. To change jobs would be disloyal to the company and the other employees. In short, when talking to the Japanese, Americans must remember that silence is used differently in each culture. This is because they each have different values on the importance of context. America is a low-context culture, while Japan is a high-context culture. This means Americans need to listen carefully for subtle messages when talking to a Japanese person. In addition, each culture has a different view of the importance of the individual. America values individualism, while Japan values collectivism. Using silence as a conversational tool, the Japanese can avoid saying something potentially offensive and avoid confrontation. Reducing conflict creates a more harmonious environment, thus strengthening the collective society. Therefore, the key to successful communication in Japan is to think of yourself as part of the group rather than as an individual.